I wanted to share a really exciting announcement with you guys that we haven't really announced to anyone yet, but wanted to let you know that Mike and I were actually invited to come down to the Afterlife Awareness Conference this year in November of 2018, and we were chosen to be the production company to actually live stream the event. So we definitely said yes. How could we say no? Our good friend William Buhlman is going to be there, so we were really excited to hear that, and we'll get a chance to reunite with him. But it's definitely going to be a wonderful experience for us. As you guys might be aware, we are starting to live stream our events, and we recently did one on CBD oil, and we are going to be down in Orlando, Florida. So I'm really looking forward to this conference. It has a lot of great people who are going to be there lecturing. Some of you might be familiar with some of the presenters down there because we actually contacted them to become guests on our show. We have already interviewed Monica Williams Murphy, who is a ER medical doctor. The medium and intuitive counselor Suzanne Geisman we had on our show already, Suzanne Northrup, who is also a professional medium. You guys are very familiar with the work of William Buhlman, and he will be there doing out-of-body travel workshops. And we also got a chance to do a podcast with the woman who is organizing the event, who is really phenomenal, and I'm really enjoying working with her, and that is Terry Daniel. So I am hoping that for those of you who don't know about the Afterlife Conference, or maybe you do and you've been on the fence about whether or not you want to purchase a plane ticket or head on down there, I really think you should. You would have the opportunity to meet Mike and I, and also our assistant producer, Alexandria. She's going to be down there helping us. And if you want some more information, I'd like you to hop onto your computer or your smartphone and type in afterlifeconference.com. Check out the agenda, the classes. The costs are really reasonable. They have a special discount going on, and I would love to really help them fulfill their goal of selling their last 100 tickets. So we would like to do that and see all of their tickets sold before we begin to send out the information for our live stream. So we're doing everything and anything we can to support this event. I hope you will consider it. Again, it is the Afterlife Awareness Conference. It is happening November 1st through the 4th in Orlando, Florida. And to tell you a little bit about the workshop, it really goes beyond death. There is a lot of hands-on instruction of out-of-body journeying, and I'm sure William is going to cover most of that. There are going to be readings with mediums and intuitives. There's bereavement support, past life regression, sacred ceremonies and rituals. So this isn't just a conference where it's all lecture. I mean, the people actually get to participate, be a part of these workshops, be a part of these rituals. The other great thing that I love of what they've added, and they're adding more to, is the academic research and scientific investigation around life after death. They also include multicultural perspectives on death and beyond, and there's also going to be a really nice presentation about talking to children about death. So I'm really excited, guys. I hope that you check it out. If nothing else, if you can't go, if you could do us a favor and go ahead and post their information, post the website up on any social media that you have. Let's spread the word. Let's get these last 100 tickets sold so that we can reach across the world and sell our live stream ticket to those who really cannot make it to Florida. All right, I hope to see you there. Hi, and thanks for tuning in to the Path 11 podcast. I am your host, April Hanna. At the Path 11 podcast, we are here trying to deliver leading-edge research on consciousness, healing, and metaphysics. And just like you, we are trying to answer the big questions about life. Who are we? Why are we here? And what is our purpose? We hope by listening to our podcast, it will make each day you live on Earth a little easier to understand. And now for today's podcast. Hi, everyone. We have a really interesting show today. We are going to be talking about an extraterrestrial civilization and channeling. And the way that I came to find this guest is through a Facebook group, and I somehow got added to it, and it is a Facebook group about the Palladian civilization. And I decided to keep myself in this group in case there was anything really interesting that I might want to discuss on the podcast. So I came across a video by our guest. His name is Jonathan Martin. Martin, and he is a channel for an extraterrestrial civilization known as the Yahyel. The Yahyel share information on spiritual awakening, living our life purpose, and extraterrestrial contact. Together with the Yahyel, Jonathan is currently developing a contact ambassadors program to move humanity towards open contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. So pretty interesting. He also has an engineering degree from Coventry University and an RHS qualification in gardening, which is also his second passion and parallel career that keeps him firmly grounded on the earth. So, Jonathan, I would like to welcome you to the Path 11 podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
Yeah. So I have to say that I'm a bit of an open-minded skeptic when it comes to some of this stuff. I would truly like to understand it more and believe that there are extraterrestrials working with, I guess you could say, human beings to channel some of their messages and hoping to help our planet. So I definitely have a lot of questions, and I'm hoping you can answer them for me. But I would like to learn a little bit about how does one person go from, going to school and getting an engineering degree to now, working on this program and channeling extraterrestrials.
Okay, thank you. So in a way, it is actually slightly connected to the engineering degree, because how this started for me was I actually got interested in conspiracy theories because someone pointed me to a documentary about 9/11, and due to having an engineering degree, I became very skeptical about the official story, because some of the things that happened on that day didn't seem to line up with my understanding of physics and mechanics. So this is sort of my entry point into conspiracies and the world of, I guess, this other world, that we see on the web of spirituality and metaphysics and conspiracies and all these things. So from there, I started researching a lot of topics such as, UFOs was the one that really took my fancy, took my passion. I became really interested in the UFO phenomena. And I came across some teachings that taught that we could contact extraterrestrials through meditation, and I was very open-minded at the time, so I thought I'll give this a go. It sounds interesting, and I spent a few months doing these ET contact meditations that I'd learnt, and I wasn't really having much luck to start with, but I was finding the meditations very beneficial to me. I was becoming very peaceful, very happy, and I was really enjoying the meditations. So I sort of carried them on for that reason, and sort of almost forgot about the fact I was trying to contact the ETs, even though I was still doing this meditation. And after about doing this for, I don't know, perhaps a month or two, I had a series of 3 UFO sightings over my house that appeared to be the first one during one of these contact meditations. So this was really what opened me up to this and set me on this path.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. And can you talk a little bit more about kind of, like you said, the gateway here into the conspiracy theory and your knowledge about engineering and 9/11? What did you put together with your knowledge of that, and then watching this documentary and then moving more into some of the conspiracy theories?
Yeah, well, of course, I remember actually it was I think I graduated in 2001, so it was the year I graduated. I remember watching the towers collapse live on live TV, or at least the second one go down, and I just sort of believed the official story. Plane hits tower collapses. Obviously, plane's responsible for the tower going down. But it wasn't until 2007 when my friend actually downloaded Transformers the movie, a pirate copy off a file sharing network, but it wasn't this film. It turned out to be a conspiracy film called Loose Change 9/11. And he said he knew I was already skeptical about the Iraq War, so he handed me this and said, "You'll love this." So I watched it, and they put forward the theory, the philosophy that the towers collapsed due to a controlled demolition. And watching the videos from that perspective, with this new information, I could see that because the towers appeared to collapse at free fall speed in a complete symmetrical collapse, what we call through the path of greatest resistance, because it fell like on top of each other. And having it shown to me in this perspective, it became very clear to me that the official story was not true, because it basically the way the towers collapsed was basically against the laws of physics. It's pretty much, well, it is impossible that three towers, because there was even a third one, would collapse in the manner they did due to fire, because fire can't even melt steel, actually.
Ah, okay. All right. And then that led you, how did that eventually lead you to the UFOs?
Well, I came with the mindset that, well, if they'd lie about this, what else would they lie about? That was my mindset. And it really sort of opened my mind. And I became fascinated by exploring all these things that I'd sort of written off as nonsense in the past, like spirituality, alternative healing, metaphysics, UFOs, all these things. I thought it was all nonsense and people were just crazy that was into aliens and all that in the past. But I was now of the mindset, well, if they'd lie about something this huge, what else would they lie about? And that was and I was extremely open-minded, and perhaps even swinging towards the gullible stage at that time. And I was sort of open to all sorts of things. And I began researching everything, just on Google, one thing to the next. On one conspiracy forum, it led one thing to the next, and I got to the point where I came across a conspiracy theory about UFOs, and it was actually an image of a like a glowing disc hovering over the funeral of the Pope, John Paul. I think it was Pope John Paul when he died, and it was that image. I wasn't sure if it was real or not, but it looked interesting, and that was what set me on the path. I found it absolutely fascinating, the possibility that extraterrestrials and UFOs could be real.
Okay. And then you move into these meditations, you have these UFO sightings, and how does that bring us to the present day of your work with Yahyel? And who is Yahyel, and can you explain that?
Yeah, so I was doing these contact meditations, and I had these series of UFO sightings, and I believe it was actually the first one. What I saw was a glowing ball hovering over the house, flying over the house from west to east. And I looked up at it and I said in my mind, if you're a UFO, fly up and down. And the instant I said that, it actually shot up in the air 100 feet. And then it moved along, came down 100 feet again, sort of maneuvers that are impossible for planes. And it was also just a glowing ball of light. And then it disappeared, went back up again, moved down, and then went off into the distance. And so this sort of opened me up. I was like, well, this is just too much of a coincidence that happened exactly the moment so I was becoming very open-minded. And as part of the visualizations of me, for the contact meditation, what I was doing, I was visualizing the image of a grey extraterrestrial in my mind, because this was the only image of an extraterrestrial I knew from the movies. And about a few months after seeing those sightings, I came across another channel called Bashar, an extraterrestrial called Bashar, channeled by Darryl Anka, who was a grey extraterrestrial, very similar to the images I was visualizing in my mind, perhaps coincidentally, perhaps there's something more to it. And I studied his teachings were about following your highest excitement and sort of aligning with your higher self through this path. And I began to follow his teachings and to try to live my excitement more and more. And after a year in 2009, I had a huge spiritual awakening experience, where it's sort of your classic spiritual awakening, where I entered into a bliss state, a high state of euphoria and bliss. And I remember thinking that I felt like I was my soul come down to earth. I didn't feel like me anymore. I felt like my soul on earth. And I felt connected to everything, like connected to all the universe, all the trees. I felt like the trees were my long lost family. And at the same time, I had some telepathic communication with Bashar. And then over the next few days, I kept going back to the forest over the next few days, because it's in the forest, trying to rekindle this bliss state, this euphoria state, because all I wanted to do was get back to that state. And about 3 days later, I went back to the forest. And when just as approaching the forest, I had a telepathic communication again with Bashar's civilization, the Sasani. They approached me as a collective civilization. And they just sort of said good morning, and we had some communications, some of which were a little personal that I don't really want to speak about here, but and that was how it started. And I remember the communication brought I could sense their joy, and I remember being so overwhelmed that it was actually possible to experience such an intense level of joy that I just broke down in tears, because until that point, because I still hadn't really integrated the experience from a few days prior, but at that point it wasn't quite so intense, so I was sort of able to integrate into my life, and I was so overwhelmed that it was actually possible to experience such a level of joy, because I didn't even know it was possible until then, and so I broke down in tears. It was so emotional, and in the coming months after that, I was able to sort of channel a bit. So I was doing it a bit for myself, and had a few more telepathic communications. So that's how the sort of telepathic link was initiated.
All right. And a question that I have, when you were saying like you were kind of sending thought forms, well, these are kind of my words, but the way that I interpret it, when you were kind of asking the UFO to move up and down, if our thoughts create our reality, if you believe that, how do you know that that it wasn't just your thoughts, using the imagination and wanting whatever it is that you're seeing to move up and down, and your thoughts create the reality, which then manifest what you're seeing to be happening? Like, how do you know that it wasn't just your thoughts creating this reality and moving this, as opposed to it being a real thing that was happening, if that makes sense?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. You got me thinking now. So I guess the truest answer to that would be I don't know. I don't know exactly what happened, but I think that was probably part of what was happening. I was creating it as I go along, and somehow these extraterrestrial experiences, because they're happening in another dimension of consciousness, they're a very powerful mirror to us, to the power of manifestation and the power of creation. So I think in some way what you're saying is true. I did create it, and I did manifest it, but also at the same time I think it was an extraterrestrial responding to my telepathic thoughts. So I think the answer is probably both.
Yeah, this is where I kind of get a little confused with this too, because it's like, well, how do we know, this is your experience, right, that you're having, and you're having communication and it's feeling very real, but could you also possibly be creating a parallel reality that is co-occurring with your present day physical incarnation on Earth at the same time?
I don't fully understand your question. Could you explain a little more?
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe if we rewind a little bit, and when we're kind of looking at quantum physics, and also understanding multiple dimensions, multiple realities, they say that there is no time, in these other dimensions, and that there are kind of parallel lives. Right? Everything kind of happening simultaneously, which is why people like yourself can tap into a different dimension or tap into this civilization, because everything is kind of happening at the same time. That's my understanding. But I guess and maybe it's not even a question that you can answer, I'm just kind of thinking out loud, of where I sometimes get confused with this, is how do we know that this isn't just a part of Jonathan Martin's world, that you have kind of created this alternate reality where you're kind of living this alternate reality with the Yahyel, but you're also Jonathan Martin and gardening and living here on Earth, and they're happening at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think to share, this is sort of the perspective I've learned from channeling the Yahyel, that the only thing that is real in our reality is our experience. And so and they explain we're shifting parallel realities all the time to different realities. So I guess all I can say is that I guess this is my reality, you know, and that they say that the only thing that is real is experience. You know, we are infinite consciousness having an experience, and our beliefs create our reality. So what we believe to be happening is our reality. You know that there is really no physical body, and you know the dream state and meditation and other dimensions, you know, they're no different from physical reality, and all that is real is experience. So from their perspective, and the perspective that I come to see reality from, is that all reality is an experience. You know, whether I'm in the dream state or in deep meditation on the astral plane, or seeing these visions in the sky, it's all real. You know, the only thing that is real for us is experience. Does this make sense?
Yes, it does. And I guess it might even tie back to, like you said, the belief system, right? So for maybe people that work with you or come in contact with you or see the work, if they believe this to be true, then they can then enter this reality with you and have this experience that your experience as well. And then you guys have a shared experience.
Yes, I think this is correct. And there was an interesting thing that happened in that sighting that perhaps would give us some sort of understanding of what we're talking about here. When after that happened, when I was asking the orb to move up and down, and it moved up and down, and on my request, it was always it was either a golden ball of light, or it disappeared completely. But then it went off into the distance over towards the east. And as it went into the distance, it seemed to change into like flashing red and green lights, like the navigation lights you see on an aeroplane. So it appeared to turn into a regular aeroplane in the distance. And also when it was going over, it also sounded like an aeroplane, I think. I get my sightings mixed up a bit, but I'm fairly certain it also sounded like an aeroplane. So we seem to have some bizarre stuff going on here, like it's almost like half UFO, half aeroplane. But there's a story about when the explorers started exploring the New World, like Christopher Columbus and Captain Cook and is it Magdalen? I can't remember his name. Some of these great sailors that went sailing around the world. They reported stories that they would anchor their ships out at sea off the shore, and then they get into their rowing boats and row into shore and meet the natives. And what they were discovering is that the natives couldn't see their ship. The ship, their sailing ship, was actually invisible to the natives. They couldn't see it at all. But the natives could see them as they got into their rowing boats and rowed into land. And what people think may have been happening is that because the ships were so far outside of the natives' belief system, they couldn't actually see them because it wasn't part of their reality. And apparently at some point, the native shaman was able to see the ships and explain that this ship was there. And then only at that point, all the natives could actually see the ship. Until then, they could only see the rowboats. When they got out of the ship, they'd just see these rowboats appearing out of nowhere. And so perhaps something similar is going on, like you were talking about. And this is the reason why it seemed to have turned back into a plane after a while. Perhaps like when it was happening, it was like so obvious and so profound that I just sort of accepted that it was a UFO. But then after a while, my skeptical mind, my conditioning came back in and started to say to myself, well, maybe it's not a UFO, maybe it's just a plane. And at that point, I couldn't see it as a UFO, so it appeared to look like a plane to me. So that's just one theory I have.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that does help and explains it a little bit with the confusing question that I was trying to ask you. So, yes, thank you for sharing that. Could you tell me a little bit more about the Yahyel? And maybe as we're moving into the Yahyel, you had said earlier basically that we are consciousness, right? There is really no such thing as the physical body if we're a consciousness, right? The body dies, we still live because we're consciousness. And I know we use the word extraterrestrial and aliens, but we're also giving them a physical body, right? Because there's drawings of what they look like and things like that. But are extraterrestrials also just a form of consciousness?
Yes. I mean, as I said, I believe all things are a form of consciousness. We are just consciousness. But it's a very interesting question because I had another sighting a couple of years ago where this blue light appeared in the sky. I was with a friend, and this blue light appeared, and I was signaling to it with a flashlight, with a torch, and they were actually flashing back to me. And what often happens in these sightings is that you feel consciousness shift, reality shifts. It's almost like we're merging auras with them, and reality becomes much more dreamlike. Often things will become very vivid, like the colours become brighter. We feel a lot happier, very euphoric, like very present, extremely still, like in a deep meditation when we become very present and it's extreme stillness, extreme presence. And there's like this sort of almost electric feeling in the air. And when this sighting happened, my consciousness shifted to a state of oneness where I experienced myself as everything. I think it's because I'm merging auras with the extraterrestrials. I begin to perceive reality as they perceive reality. I'm almost being encompassed in their aura. And at this point, I became one with creation, and I sense them as oneness. When their craft comes into the sky, it feels like they are everywhere. Their consciousness is everywhere, and my consciousness is everywhere. And the feeling I had was exactly like you say. It was that blue orb, that blue light coming out of the sky, that extraterrestrial craft manifesting in my reality. It felt like it was coming out of my consciousness. It felt like the sky was my consciousness, was the depths of my infinite mind, and I was manifesting this extraterrestrial craft out of the depths of my consciousness. It felt like the sky out there was me, was my consciousness, and they were coming out of the depths of my consciousness, and the sky was like a representation, a physical manifestation of my infinite consciousness, and it didn't feel like they were coming from out there. It almost felt like the sky was deep within my own consciousness.
Okay, that makes sense to me. So when we begin to talk about the Yahyel and who they are, it almost makes me wonder: are you just also channeling a part of your higher self?
Yes, I would say definitely in a way they are a aspect of my higher self and an aspect of my consciousness, and really come back to reflect back to us a reminder that we are all one, and that there is only consciousness, and somehow everything is me. And yeah, I mean, this is their message, that we are one, that is only one consciousness. Like you are aspects of me too. You're just a reflection of my own evolving consciousness, and so are they. But it can often be much more vivid and easier to understand from them. Does that answer your question? I sort of got lost in my own answer there.
Yeah, it does. But I think if we can call something, right, it makes it easier in the human experience to now identify with, okay, the Yahyel is this extraterrestrial civilization, and they, are here to share this information. I think when we can call it something else, it might be easier for the collective consciousness to understand it, as opposed to getting into some of the talk that you and I are talking about our higher selves, and we are one, and ultimately it's all about love and things of that sort.
Yeah, definitely, and I think it's both. It is just, there is only consciousness, and these are all just experiences passing through our consciousness. No different to a dream at night, but also it is real. We have to validate our human experience, that this is what we came here to experience. So on one level, it's just consciousness, it's just things happening within consciousness, just reflections of my own shifting consciousness. But at the same time, of course, it is a real experience, and this is why I think channeling extraterrestrials is so fascinating, because it's like almost bridging the worlds between the spiritual and the physical. It's like when people are channeling spirits, such as Abraham Hicks and these sort of spiritual entities, people find it quite easy to accept that. They don't doubt it so much in the way they do extraterrestrials, because it's like, oh, she's channeling her spirit guide, that makes sense. But when I'm channeling an extraterrestrial and I talk about, seeing them in the skies, it's like really pushing people's beliefs and people's realities to the limit. And I think that's why it's so fascinating, because it's somehow bridging the worlds between the spiritual. It's grounding this higher consciousness in physical reality. It's an opening for humanity to see that the multidimensional is available in our everyday lives.
Yes, exactly. I think you're right. I think you kind of like hit the nail right on the head. There is that pushing of that when you start to talk about the extraterrestrial versus a spirit guide, and using the example of Abraham Hicks. So let's talk a little bit about the Yahyel. What have you learned from them, and what is the information that they are using you to get out to Earth?
I think probably their most powerful message, the most potent message, is the message that our path to everything we desire, to everything our heart, our true desire wishes to create in this world, wishes to experience in this world, is through following our excitement. I also have a Hindu teacher, a Advaita Vedanta teacher, and interestingly, this is the same teaching that they teach in the East, the idea that everyone has their own path in life. Like, if we look at a lot of contemporary spiritual teachings, non-duality and these sort of things, they teach a lot about, self-inquiry, meditation. This is the way to become self-realized. This is the way to become enlightened. This is the way to manifest what you desire. But how the Yahyel differ a little in their teachings, which also links up to some ancient Vedic Hindu teachings, is that everyone has their own path. And whilst one person might become enlightened through self-inquiry or meditation, it's not relevant for everyone. There's as many paths to self-realization and manifesting our life's theme, our life's call, as there are people. And what they teach is that the way to creating and attracting what it is we desire in our realities, whether it's more abundance or a better relationship or self-realization and enlightenment, the fastest path to that is through the path of our highest excitement, because the highest excitement is actually the guidance of our higher self, the direct guidance. So whatever excites us in each and every given moment, and this can come in the form, it doesn't have to be like jumping up and down excitement. It can be like a serene feeling, any positive feeling, love, peace, compassion, serenity, creativity, any positive energy is the guidance of our higher self. And this is what I found really powerful for me, and I think is such a powerful teaching for humanity, that the way to our own self-realization or whatever it is we desire is through the path of our highest excitement. And by tuning into what excites us in each and every given moment, we are following the path of least resistance to creating what we wish to bring and what we wish to experience in this reality. So
kind of like the old saying goes, follow your bliss.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. as they say time and time again, that they're certainly not the first people to share this message in our reality. We've known this wisdom for many thousands of years. They're just reminding us.
Right. Now, in kind of going back to a little bit of like the conspiracy theory stuff, and I've heard people talk about like the ascension process, and sometimes other channelers that I've seen, kind of talk about the breaking down of Earth's civilization. They talk about the banking system and, the corruption of the government and the wars and all of that. And where I tend to find my skepticism, or maybe it could also be the programming, that you've talked about, or that's been downloaded to, kind of keep society in line or whatever, is that that kind of talk has been going on for years, and how these extraterrestrials are kind of coming through and delivering this message. And I've seen people take some really drastic measures of like pulling all of their money out of their bank accounts, kind of preparing for the end of the world type thing. And it's still like that stuff hasn't quite happened in what's been predicted over these years and years and years of people claiming that these extraterrestrials are claiming that this is what's going to happen to the civilization if we don't act now. And to me, that I don't know. I'd like you to talk about that. But the other thing that I think kind of rubs me the wrong way a little bit is that it feels to me to be very fear-based. So like on one hand, there's like all these extraterrestrials wanting to preach about love, follow your bliss, go to your highest excitement, find your joy. And then at the same time, there's sometimes this countering message of just like how horrible the earth is and it's self-destructing, and the banks and the government, and fear, 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 fear. And then people, I feel, really buy into this and make drastic changes in their life. And, whatever was predicted to happen, it has not happened.
Well, the message that the Yahyel share is always follow your excitement, always follow your joy, and never follow your fear. So they're saying that the path to follow is the path of love and excitement and creativity and joy, and fear is in a sense the opposite. Fear is a sign that we actually have an out of alignment perspective, an out of alignment belief. So they would recommend that anyone act on their fear. In fact, they recommend completely the opposite. They say if you have a fear, it's a perspective that needs redefining. So they would never recommend these sort of paths.
Okay. So, well, then this kind of leads me to a question that hopefully you can help me to understand a little bit better. And this is where I think it's important, for yourself too. It's like, how do you gain your own credibility in this? Because, when I was searching through your YouTube channel, you had one that was posted in October of 2016. And a lot of, what you were saying, you were out in the woods, was all about kind of the banking, the government, Hillary Clinton. You had some F-bombs throughout the whole thing, and it wasn't extremely loving. It felt very fear-based. And that kind of like confused me, because then here you are also channeling this very peaceful civilization. But then I see that YouTube and watching how you're kind of presenting yourself. And then that leaves me to be a little more skeptical and say, well, I don't know if this person's credible or not. So how do you gain some more of that credibility within somebody like me watching that and feeling like I'm getting mixed messages from your channel?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. So, I guess that was my perspective coming through. I wasn't sharing the perspective of the Yahyel because of course, I channel the Yahyel, but I don't live there. I try and incorporate as much of their teachings into my life as I can, but that was me coming through. That was my perspective, which differs from the perspective of the Yahyel in some ways. So
pretty greatly.
I don't think the Yahyel would recommend that, I go on negative rants like that. And perhaps it was me, I think I have a lot of, still some frustration in me about these sort of things. And, part of me just wants to go on the warpath and like, rah, 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 what you look, what you done, look what you did on 9/11. I'm going to get my, perhaps it's the negative ego in me. I mean, that's a very good question, and perhaps it's something I need to look at in myself. And I still do talk about these things from time to time. I've the message the Yahyel bring through is that we shouldn't focus on this stuff. We should instead of focusing on the negative and what's wrong with the world, we should begin to create things, positive things. If we think there's there's corruption in government, we shouldn't go out ranting about the government like I did. They would recommend I don't do that, but I did it anyway because I was frustrated, possibly. But what they recommend is that if we believe there's corruption in government, we should begin to create a new government. Rather than focusing on the negative, focus on creating a positive alternative. So that they say if we believe there's corruption in government, if we believe the banking system is corrupt, we should focus on creating new governments. We should focus on working together to create new economic systems. So this would be their perspective that perhaps differs from mine a little or a lot.
Okay, thank you for answering that. And I guess another question that I have too, and again, I'm always willing to look at my own, programming as well, and challenging my own belief systems, which is why I'm kind of asking a lot of these questions. But do you ever have anyone kind of see the work that you're doing and also question your mental health stability? And the reason why I ask that is because I'm a trained mental health therapist, have a master's degree in that. But with the work that I've done, with energy work and consciousness, I also understand that there's many people who our society may deem to be crazy or not all there or paranoid or schizophrenic. And I do have a greater understanding that there's much more than what we can see and experience here. But how do you ever run up against that where somebody might say, well, he's kind of fitting the description of some paranoia. Maybe there's some schizophrenia here. When he goes on these rants, he could have this, pressured speech and, just like he's in a different reality and not really based in the here and now. And people could question not just you, but, anyone that's channeling these extraterrestrial, right? Because it doesn't quite fit into our society. So do you ever run up against that at all?
Yes. I mean, mostly where I ran up to that was when I first started putting the videos out, and from old friends, that I had on Facebook and were seeing these videos. And yeah, for sure, I had people. I mean, I think a lot of people. I think it's. I think it's part of the conditioning of human culture to believe that. I think it has actually been. I mean, as part of the extraterrestrial, the UFO cover-up. I think part of the way they have covered this up is by. Because they haven't actually covered it up very well at all, because everyone knows about it. But the way they've sort of kept it dampened down is by they've gone through this conditioning process of creating beliefs in people through the media, through movies, through cartoons, and things like this. That people that believe in this stuff is crazy. So I think it's part of the human conditioning, the way society has been cultured to keep society under control. That people automatically have subconsciously programmed into their subconscious that anyone who doesn't adhere to the current paradigm is crazy. So yeah. I mean, I don't see it so much. I think when you begin to, really follow your passion and resonate on a higher frequency, you don't seem to attract these people into your reality. But yeah, for sure, I've definitely come up against that.
Sure. Okay. Well, great. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. And I hope that I was able to ask some questions that maybe even our listeners have in trying to kind of sort some of this stuff out and take a look at our own belief systems, our own programming, and being open to different things out there like the Yahyel and the work that you're doing in the world. So I thank you very much for being a guest.
Yeah, thank you too. I've really enjoyed it. I thought the questions were brilliant, and we really got into some fascinating topics. So I really enjoyed that, going into some of the deeper metaphysics of what's really going on here. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you.
Great. All right. Well, best of luck to you and all the work that you do.
Yes, and you too. And I hope your Path 11 goes well.
If you want more information about our films, visit our website, path11productions.com, to purchase DVDs or to rent and stream each film. You can also find our trilogy of films on iTunes, Amazon Prime, and Gaia.com. You can still use our smartphone app for both Android and iPhones. Just search for Path 11 in the Google Play App Store, or if on an iPhone, look for Path 11 in the iOS App Store. Catch you next time.